flippity flop.
I'm Turbo Joe, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull, I have the power!" Cringer became the mighty Battle Cat, and I became He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe. What is up, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Intellivision Historian. And with this episode, episode 2, I'm very excited. We're covering He-Man, Masters of the Universe, exclusive to the Intellivision back in 1983. This was a big deal because He-Man was a super popular cartoon character for us kids back in the early 80s. As you just seen that intro, that's the music. Back in 1983, the Intellivision showcased certain games had music in them, and I would say Masters of the Universe was one of a fraction of the library that actually showcased music. I mean, we didn't see regular music in video game consoles till several years later when the Nintendo, the NES came out, or the Sega Master System. So I mean, I just like to state, in these episodes coming up and in the future of this series, the Intellivision was ahead of its time, and it was something unique and offered something different than competition. You know what I mean? And those enthusiasts that purchased that Intellivision, back in the early 80s, obviously I was a baby back in the early 80s, but I have vivid memories of playing on this thing with my father. And so let's just get into it. On a side note here, I have shoeboxed Masters of the Universe. I've owned the cartridge for, since the 90s when I was able to get games for pennies. Intellivision games were going for really cheap back then. Now this game loose is going for $30-$40. Complete in box, you're looking at $70-$80 depending on the quality of the box and everything like that. So recently I wanted to acquire the box because my box was long destroyed many years ago, So I was able to find on eBay, somebody was selling the box, the cartridge, and one overlay for like $70. So I contacted him and I asked him, can I just buy the box? I'll give you $30 for the box, And he obliged, and so I was able to get the box because I already had the overlays in the manual, and I have a quality, mint cartridge. I wasn't, the stuff you see on eBay, most of it is, the labels are faded, there's like mold on the cartridges and whatnot. My shit's mint. I've always kept my cartridges, sealed in like plastic containers over the years, and that protects from moisture and whatnot. And as you could see, overlays, beautifully done. This was so unique back then, and which makes, like I mentioned in the first episode, which makes emulation for this type of game difficult. Well, emulation for Intellivision games difficult because a lot of these games required that 9-button keypad. It's always funny how people that oppose the Intellivision, mostly back then the Atari 2600 fans, just like every generation you had Intellivision Atari, you had NES for Sega, you had Genesis for Super Nintendo, you know what I mean? So back then it's Intellivision with, the two leading consoles were Intellivision and Atari, the 2600. The naysayers would say that disc controller was crap, it wasn't accurate, you needed an arcade stick. I'm going to show you some gameplay and some footage. This is a game that requires skill. It's a side-scrolling shooter with two different sequences. One phase of the game is a side-scrolling shooter, and the other phase of the game is kind of reminds me of like the old school, like late 1970s football game, that little handheld. Those of you that remember this game, you're operating, the running back, and you have to dodge all the other dots that are coming after you. And super cool. The gauges. You have your fuel called gasoline. I guess on the planet Eternia, they called fuel gasoline, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so let's just get into this gameplay. This was one of my favorite games on the Intellivision, and to this day, it still looks pretty impressive if you factor in the fact that the Intellivision was only able to handle, maybe I don't remember exactly, 7 to 10 colors at a time on the screen. It could be off by a couple of colors, but it was a minuscule amount. And then you had the NES, which was able to produce even better sprites. This game looks pretty impressive. So, the side-scrolling shooter. Now, what you want to do is you have to focus on destroying those little balls that are coming at you. Now, since I'm playing this on the challenger mode, it's gonna be the game is moving a little faster, and I wanted to play it on the challenging mode to show you like the extra speed and how the computer can handle all these things at once on the screen. This was pretty high tech back in '83. So you can drop bombs, and you can use those bombs to hit Skeletor at the bottom. He's gonna try and run back and forth, and you have an opportunity to hit him, and you'll get bonus points. When you finish the phase, you'll see that you'll tally up the scores. You'll get points for hitting those fireballs and points for hitting Skeletor. Now you have to get to the end of the screen, you have to get to the end of the phase before you run out of fuel. And just by charging forward, you'll be able to get there quicker before you run out of fuel. Now this is the second phase of the game. Now I made that first phase look easy. I've been playing this game my whole life, so it looks easy. So the second phase is getting to Skeletor. Now he's gonna be throwing all these obstacles at you. You see those little floating swords that fly by. They give you bonus points. So you navigate through, you get to the end, sword fighting with Skeletor. You've completed phase 1. You chase him. That's how Skeletor always ran, if you remember the cartoon. So it's fitting. Skeletor is always running away from you. The second phase of phase 2 gets a little more difficult as you're chasing him through the forest. You're going to use a shield. As you see, I deployed the shield, and that will block you. Well, the shield will block incoming attacks. But if you get hit without that shield, it puts you back. It sets you back, and you're going to see, I think on this sequence, I get hit. Or maybe not. I thought I did. Navigating, there we go, I got hit. So I see how it pushes you back, and this is timed. So you'll have, I think, around like 80 seconds to get through all 3 phases. With enough practice, you can get through it. And that's the final phase of the second phase. So what happens is, you're chasing, Skeletor's always on the run, and that completes, the game. And since this is a high score game, you get back on, and you go to round 2, and you start it all over. Back to the Wind Raider. And the second time around, the game gets more difficult. It takes more shots to destroy these balls, and Skeletor moves a little faster. The game speeds up. The trajectories start to move around, and the game gets a little more difficult. It's just a great game, and those of you that have it in television, or those of you that are just curious about the Intellivision, this was one of those heavy hitters back in '83. This was a popular one, and it commands a higher price on eBay. So thank you all for watching episode 2. The next episode, I'm not sure where I want to lean towards. There's so much I want to talk about with the Intellivision. I think we're going to unbox a brand new, well, not brand new, but complete inbox Intellivision 2. There's a backstory behind the Intellivision 2. We're going to talk about the Intellivision 2 on episode 3 of the Intellivision Historian. So if you like this kind of content, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button for more Intellivision content. Take care, my friends. Peace out.